From Relay, this is Upgrade, episode 565. Today's show is brought to you by Fitbod, Vitally, and ExpressVPN. My name is Mike Hurley. I am joined by Jason Snell. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Mike.
I have a Snell Talk question for you.
Okay, I'm ready. Okay.
I would like to know, other than talking to me, how are you spending your Memorial Day weekend?
Yes, Memorial Day weekend here in the U.S. It's a bank holiday in the U.K., by the way.
Yep.
You know that.
I knew that.
But we're still working.
Not that my day is any different.
Nope.
but yes, I know
it's a Monday. We went to visit my in-laws in L.A., so I am sitting in the room that I always think of as the ancestral home of the Upgradies. Because we recorded the first Upgradies in this. I recorded in this room. You didn't. You weren't.
I feel
here,
like a plaque should be made.
I know the first Upgradies was recorded right here at this uncomfortable desk on this uncomfortable chair. But yes, I am back there, and
people who watch the show on YouTube can get to see the ancestral home.
It's real exciting. It's a guest bedroom. So. Anyway, it is that we did that. We went out. We had lunch yesterday, basically at the beach. So that was fun.
Oh, nice.
And then we had dinner on Saturday night in Santa Monica, at a place that was like we were outside on the streets, and it was a really great dinner with Lauren's sister and brother-in-law and Lauren's parents. So. Really nice time there too. So yeah, and we brought the dog, so that's also fun because she gets stimulation and a car ride and all that kind of thing.
On the show a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned that the Indy 500 is like a good Memorial Day tradition, and
sure.
I want to let you know in Upgrade Plus today, I'm going to tell this. I watched the Indy 500.
Oh wow!
I talk about it. I watched it, but it's going to be an Upgrade Plus because I don't want everyone to know my opinions about the Indy 500. So if you want Mike's opinions
hidden
on the Indy 500,
customers only,
go to getupgradeplus.com.
Great.
Thank you to me.
A British man reviews the great American Heartland event of the Indianapolis 500-mile race. Yes, great. Can't wait.
Thank you to me for submitting that Snell Talk question.
Thanks, Mike.
I wrote it directly into our Google Doc, but if you would like to submit a question of your own for future use on the show, you can't do that. Go to getupgradefeedback.com. No, just go to upgradefeedback.com, not get. Yeah. Just upgradefeedback. There's too many domains, Jason. Upgradefeedback.com, and you could submit yours in there. We have some follow-up. As we expected, and I kind of predicted, last Tuesday evening, Fortnite returned to the App Store in the US. I believe, from what I could find online, zero statement from Apple on this one. It just appeared. So it's good to know. They're scared of the judge.
Yeah.
Right? They're obviously very scared of Judge Yvonne Gonzalez-Rogers because the judge said, if you can't sort this out, you got to come see me.
See me.
And like, see me after school.
After class.
And they were like, no, thank you. Nope. And now Fortnite is back.
Tell me who you're sending and then send them to me so that what happens then? I can put them in jail? I don't know. What is I'm going to yell at them? They're like, no, forget it. We're just going to do this.
She might put him in jail. I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe.
So I was quite surprised about this, actually. So obviously, Epic are doing what you'd expect, right? They have a way for you to go out to the Epic Game Store and buy the V-Bucks, which is the currency inside of Fortnite. And they're kind of doing it in a way which feels pretty good from a following the rules perspective. You press a button and then a window pops up and it says choose how to pay, and it's got Epic Store or in-app purchase. And what I had expected Epic would do is give you a discount, right? That like 1,000 V-Bucks for you is cheaper. We're going to make it cheaper than if you bought it through Apple. And that isn't actually what they're doing. If you buy V-Bucks through the Epic Game Store, you get 20% back in Epic reward points that you can use to buy other games on the Epic Game Store, which is a full game store, or you can use that money to buy other virtual currency like V-Bucks, more virtual currency inside of Fortnite. So you kind of build up a credit in your account, but it's still charged the same price. And it's very interesting. It's just not what I expected them to do. I expected them to say, hey, it's cheaper, right? Like, it is cheaper to spend it here. I don't know if they are trying, if they're like trying not to upset Apple, right? Like that feels like the way that would upset them more if you told them the price was different. But what I also expect happening is Epic is also trying to maximize the amount of money that they could make from this transaction, right? Because they're getting
Yes.
all of the $9, and
Yes.
what they are giving you is not cash back; it's
Store
just
credit.
store credit. It's more fake
Yeah.
money.
It's also training people to use the Epic Store, right? It's getting
To
people
know it
comfortable
even
with
exists.
yes.
Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, it was interesting to see that. I'm not like, how dare they? It's just I wasn't expecting that route. But this is the route that they've taken. Again, though, like if you are a Fortnite player and you are spending a lot of money on V-Bucks, this is a better deal for you. Like, just unequivocally, this is a better deal for you because it's essentially 20% cheaper because you get 20% extra.
Right.
So there you go. And I wasn't expecting more follow up on this so quickly. Donald Trump has threatened Apple with a 25% tariff for iPhones unless production is moved to the US. We spoke about this last week that you had a problem with Tim Cook, didn't like all those phones being made in India. This will apparently apply to other phone makers and is expected to go into effect at the end of June.
Yeah.
If any of this tariff stuff can be believed.
Because no phone maker can make their phones in the US. So great, I guess.
Apparently, there was some reporting today. I don't know what I think about it, but apparently, Tim Cook declined an invitation to join the administration on the Middle East trip that the president's been on.
Yeah.
Not sure if that fed into this. He's like, maybe he's like personally.
He seemed to mention that, I think, somewhere on the trip. He was like, "Oh, Tim Cook's not here," or whatever. And like, okay, fine.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I guess this. I don't know. Like, is this okay? It is a problem if it holds, right? Like, because here's the thing: we've spoken about this already. They can't do this, right? They can't make these phones in America. They just can't.
No. I read a very serious analysis that said you might as well say make them on the moon. It just can't happen.
Huh. I like that. But like, it's just impossible to do. I mean, no, again, we spoke about this last week. It is not impossible. It is possible on some timeline, right? Like there is a possibility of this. It is just not feasible. It doesn't make any sense because the phone would be more expensive to produce than the 25% tariff. Like, it still just doesn't work out. So what is probably going to happen is the price is going to go up on iPhones. Not probably. If this tariff holds, iPhone prices go up.
Yep.
The thing that if I was Tim Cook, what I am concerned about is this tariff just continuing to increase. Because this is what Trump has shown that he will do. Now, what Trump has also shown that he will do is he will back down if you don't back down, right? Which is what happened in China. So
yeah, I think my best guess, if I was, and I'm very glad I'm not the person who has to talk to the White House about this, would be to make the case again, probably to try to get it directly in the ear of the president, that what he's asking for is actually impossible. Certainly impossible. You could even say impossible during his term or whatever. Like, it's impossible.
Probably during his lifetime.
Probably during his lifetime. But well, you don't remind him of that because and basically, like, what steps can we take that will satisfy you in the meantime? Because there are lots and lots and lots of reasons why this can't happen. And like, if they're defiant and they're like, well, no, just make it happen. You're magic wizards of technology. Get the, what is it? Bring in the boffins, right? Like, just make it happen. And I'm like, well, we can't do it. It's not possible. So is there a country you'd like us to make them in? No, USA. Okay, well, we're already investing $500 million or whatever in the USA. You tell us, like, here's some suggestions of ways we could do this. We could do more assembly. We could quantify. You could make the tariffs on a sliding scale, or you could just say we're gonna, in the end, we're gonna do this. In which case, that's just what it's gonna be, and our prices are gonna go up, and everybody's gonna know that it was because of you, and that's it. So. But that would be my argument, is try to get him to either back down or let's invent another thing that allows you to say, see what I did? I got them to do this thing, but that thing's actually meaningless. I saw some people saying, could you set up a factory that makes, 10 iPhones a day for an exorbitant amount of money, but say, look, Apple has brought iPhone production back to the US. Could you re-architect the assembly process so that they're assembled in sort of two pieces and they're imported in the U.S. and then those two pieces are put together in the U.S. and then put in a box? I don't think any of that. It's all ridiculous, right? It's all ridiculous
Mm-hmm.
theater. But the question is, what will satisfy the White House? And nobody knows. And you think you satisfied them, and then somebody, and here's the thing that I'm really interested in. Somebody keeps telling Tim Cook, "Oh, you shouldn't trust Apple. They're just doing this thing," and they're not wrong. That person who's telling
Do
them
you mean
that.
Trump? You said Tim Cook. Do you mean?
Oh, sorry. Somebody's telling Tim Cook. No, somebody's telling Trump
There
things
you
that
go.
contradict Tim Cook. There we go.
Yes.
Somebody's telling Trump, don't listen to Tim Cook. And like, who is that person? And what is their end goal there? And is that person delusional about Apple's ability to, because like Apple invests a lot in the United States. They just do it in the places where it makes sense. And the problem with a lot of things going on with this administration is they seem to believe that they want to bring a lot of things back to the United States that don't make sense and that haven't made sense for decades and that nobody wants to bring back because they're like really low paying, terrible factory jobs that Americans don't want. And yet, whatever, the Treasury Secretary was like, "Oh, your kids will work in factories, and then their kids will work in factories." And it's like, this is a good message. So again, yes, Apple could invest decades in doing this, and in fact, that would be one of your sales pitches: is we're going to start the work now. It's going to take a long time though, so cut us a break while we do this, but we're going to start the work now. In fact, we're already starting it with TSMC, and we'll do some other stuff, but we're starting the work now and see if they'll listen. But if there are people inside the White House who just believe that Tim Cook can flip a switch and iPhone production can come back to the U.S., at some point you just say, all right, well, tariffs it is then, because what else are you going to do? Like, there's literally, you can't make the impossible happen. There is a limit to what they can do to play ball with the White House, and one of the limits is reality. So, which is not a limitation to the White House, apparently.
I think at this point, to me at least, it seems abundantly clear that for whatever reason, Donald Trump is unhappy with this scenario, right? Which is that is like because he has obviously been told many times by this point, right, that Apple cannot produce their phones in America. He must have been told this. There's no way he's not been told this.
Sure.
He is unwilling to accept this as a possibility, right?
Yes, he disbelieves lots of facts. Yes.
Or he's just, I think my kind of feeling on this is just like, he's just like, I don't care. It's not my problem. It's your problem. Make it happen. Like, I just don't think he is even interested in entertaining the conversation. And so I don't know what they do.
I think the India thing made him feel like he was being taken advantage of by Apple.
Which he was.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, look, I'm being as kind as you could possibly be to a set of decisions that I think are legitimately insane. But Apple were going to get around the China tariff, right? And like, I think that Trump saw the amount of money they would make from Apple from whatever China tariffs as a good thing, right? That like, this is going to be good money for us. And Apple were like, haha, we've got you on this one. And like, they played their card and he played his card. And now they just keep playing cards. And I don't know what happens.
Yeah, I don't know.
Point.
I don't know, 52 pickup at some point will happen. Yeah, I don't know.
There have been a lot of articles written about, like, Tim Cook's very bad week, and now like Wall Street Journal is like Tim Cook's very bad year, which is definitely the case at this point.
Yep.
And look, going back to, there's almost too much discussion right now of like Tim being fired or whatever. I mean, if you're Tim Cook at this point, do you want to keep doing this? Yeah. Like, what is going on to this company? Like, we've got more of it in today's episode, but like, it just feels not nice right now.
I think Tim Cook is staying now in great deal because he's concerned about the company that he's been working at all this time and figures that if he leaves, people can be cynical and say, well, he's going to get paid a lot of money to do whatever he's doing now. But I look, if he didn't,
the money's not important anymore.
He could pull the parachute and walk away right now and he'd have a huge amount of money. I think he had a legitimate close relationship with Steve Jobs, believes in what Steve believed, believes in Apple, and wants it to continue. And I think Tim Cook believes that the best scenario is for him to stay through all of this because he's the best positioned person to deal with a lot of this stuff, which is probably true. Although I am reminded, I'm reading David Mitchell's book Unruly, which is about a history of English kings. Very funny book because it's David Mitchell.
Yep.
And one of the things he points out is some of the worst things happen when a king holds on to power as long as possible, thinking, well, I'm the best at this, so I'm going to hold on to this. But what ends up happening is his heirs aren't prepared, and he doesn't prepare an heir and say, I'm going to invest more power in my heir. And so then the king, it's all going great. And then the king, like lands funny on a saddle and gets wounded in his intestines and he dies the next day, right? And it's just like, well, that's it for the king, and nobody's there, and there's a power vacuum, and nobody's prepared, and it ends up being much worse for everybody. So I'm not saying that that's happening here, but it struck me that I do think Tim Cook is probably the right person for this moment in terms
Yes.
of these very specific things.
Mm-hmm.
But we also can look at all the underlying problems that are going on and wonder, in the long run, is this a Tim Cook's good for the short term, but in the long term, the longer he stays, the worse the long term gets? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I stand by very much what I said a couple of weeks ago, which is that I think that the company needs a pretty large culture change. I'm not
Yeah.
alone in thinking this. I don't know how it goes exactly. I posited the idea that maybe Tim Cook needs to leave for that to happen, but maybe not. Like, I'm not like parading outside of Apple demanding that he is removed, but I am definitely of the thinking that right now he's the only person that can handle this situation if there is a situation to
if
be
if
handled.
if it can be handled, yeah, absolutely, it's true. And this is the problem: is for all of our criticism of Tim Cook and Apple's culture in a lot of other areas recently, I still believe that dealing with the White House and dealing with the supply chain in this era of tariffs and a lot of pressure being put on the supply chain, I'm not sure there's anybody else who could do all of that as effectively as Tim Cook, which is why you keep
Yep.
Tim Cook around.
Yep. Or as we were talking about, or you at least keep him as chairman of the board.
Sure, you got to keep him
Right.
around. Doesn't necessarily mean keep him as CEO, but it does mean keep him
Exactly.
around. Yeah.
An anonymous upgrading wrote in and said, I work at the AI ML org, so that's artificial machine learning organization at Apple, and would like to correct something Jason said on the last episode.
This is so great.
The current version of the foundation models being used for Apple Intelligence are not the same ones that we announced last summer. They have been updated multiple times, in fact. This is especially important for things such as additional language support. Along with additional languages, other metrics have improved, such as context length and MLLU score. I got separate, additional, unrelated feedback from a trusted individual that Apple updates these models frequently over the internet and they adapt the models. It's not just tied to OS releases. This is good feedback. My question would be, how would we know this? Like, are we supposed to see this as better in anywhere? Like, where is this better? I don't know.
Yeah. I think that the challenge here is, if it's not happening in OS updates and it's not being announced, are we noticing? And also, I would say a larger question is there a large model update being readied as a part of the next iOS cycle, and that update is not being rolled out because they want to hold it? And I would argue again that the way AI works in the rest of the industry, maybe you need to start branding and making a big deal about pushing out a new model instead of, especially, and this is great news actually, if it's not tied to an OS update. If that's
this is
true,
good. Yes,
that's
this
great,
is
because
good.
then there could just be a press release some Tuesday where Apple says, our foundation model goes to some ridiculous version number, and so it's improved, and here are the benchmarks, and look how awesome we are. And they could start doing that, and it would at least, if they are working hard and getting good results, it would allow them to show that they're not maintaining radio silence for a year after they announce AI features. So this is all great to hear.
Yes.
But you and I think our point is, we didn't know this. And that's the point, right? Like, if it's getting better, why do we not know? Why is that not? And then my other question is there a next wave that is being held back? Because that's the thing they're not going to talk about. And it's going to be, it's going to be September or June or whenever before we see that thing. Or is this the state of the art? I don't know that.
There's also,
it shows this
again,
isn't how they think.
I don't know enough about how this works either, really, from a technical level. But I can imagine there's also the possibility that the foundational model, is being updated a lot, but the tools are not being
Aren't
updated at the same
yeah
frequency to take advantage of the changes in the model. And the
maybe
reason I mention this is a couple of days ago, I made an image playgrounds image of John Voorhees to troll him, and it was just looked atrocious, like so
mm,
bad. So I think image playgrounds is a place where that's not seeming to make a difference. I
right
mean, the only thing that they've added was I think is the animation or the sketch style that they added as
right
part of an OS release. But aside from that, I don't know where these changes are occurring. I mean, I will say I don't use Apple's writing tools, so maybe you see it a lot in there,
it's possible
especially with
they're better.
context length.
Could be.
But yeah, I'm not sure exactly where I'm supposed to see that benefit. But it is good to know that they have the plumbing to do this. Unbelievably, next week is the draft.
Yeah,
I
it is.
had this thought this morning. Couldn't believe it. Started
Yeah.
duplicating documents, and so next week we will be competing for the draft.
For the draft, the WWDC draft, but
Including the
So many
California Bear
letters.
Trophy. I thought about that
Dub.
today
I
too.
don't want to call it Dub is the problem. Yeah. Oh, the California Bear Trophy. Yeah. Yes. Yes. We currently share it.
We need better rules. I remember we need better rules.
We
so
do
we'll talk
need
about
better
that
rules.
in Upgrade Plus next week.
I will gin up some better California Bear Trophy rules because we ended up
Yeah.
within
Tied?
miles of each other. And so we declared a tie because depending on how you interpreted entering the location, it changed who won. So it was a tie. It was so amazing, right? Like amazing. And I'm glad that we got some of the rule issues out right away. But who would have thought that we would have been within a couple miles of each other? But we were. So we will revisit that. And I think about that every time I look at my fridge, which is where my California Bear Trophy is. So
I have it in my trophy cabinet behind me.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. So that's for the people who don't know. That is we try to predict the name of Mac OS named after assuming it continues to be named after a California place name.
No, that would be funny.
If it stops, then we just retire the California Bear Trophy after a single tie.
No, the California Bear Trophy is related to like a bottle of wine. It's just like it's just like something completely different, but we still just call it the California Bear Trophy.
Yes. It was a one-off. So anyway, we'll try that, and then there's because we don't tend to actually predict it. We do a thing where we predict it, and the closest to the actual geographical location wins, except when it's identical, like it was last year.
I'm putting a link in the show notes to Spalin in the Discord, who made a California Bear Trophy website, and I'll put that in the show notes if people want to check it out.
Just very high quality of one thing that happened.
Yep.
Ooh, amazing.
This episode is brought to you in part by our friends over at Fitbod. If you're looking to get your fitness level in check, you want to make some change in your life, it can be really hard to know where to start, which is why I'm very happy to let you know that Fitbod is an easy, affordable, and honestly a great way to build a fitness plan that is made just for you, because everybody has their own path for personal fitness. That is why Fitbod uses data to make sure they customize things to suit you. Fitbod will improve and will give you better workouts as you do, so every workout remains challenging and will push you to make the progress that you're looking for with your personal health journey. They keep all of this information, including information about your experience, your environment, your goals, your body, which you give them. You give them this information, they store it in your Fitbod gym profile, and then they use all of this and the exercise data that they're collecting about what you're doing to track your muscle recovery. This makes sure that you avoid burnout and keep up your momentum, because they want to give you a well-balanced routine, because this will make sure that it's keeping track of muscle fatigue and recovery. You don't want to overwork or underwork your muscles. You need a balance. And that's what Fitbod will give you. Also, by giving you different types of exercises in your routine, it's going to make sure that things feel fresh and new. Fitbod uses exercise science to give you the best possible workout. They have analyzed billions of data points, fine-tuned by certified personal trainers. And talking about personal trainers, they've also had more than 1,000 demonstration videos put together to show you exactly how to perform every exercise. The app looks great and is super easy to use. It has tracking charts, weekly reports, and sharing cards so you can keep track of your achievements and share them with your friends. And also it integrates with your Apple Watch, Wear a smartwatch, and other apps that you use like Strava, Fitbit, and Apple Health. Personalized training of this quality can be expensive, but Fitbod is only $12.99 a month or $79.99 a year. But you can get yourself 25% off your membership by signing up today at fitbod.me/upgrade. So go now and get your customized fitness plan at fitbod.me/upgrade. That is fitbod.me/upgrade for 25% of your membership. Our thanks to Fitbod for their support of this show and Relay. So last week, OpenAI announced that they are acquiring a company called IO. This company had been set up by Sir Jony Ive to explore a new family of AI-powered hardware devices, kind of in collaboration with OpenAI. But
Yeah, that was
they
the
were kind
idea.
of
Is
like,
they were working with OpenAI to build some
yeah,
hardware, but it was the separate company that Jony Ive had set up to work with OpenAI on building some hardware. And last week they did a big announcement that apparently was just more like, well, yes, we're doing that and we're formalizing it and we're bringing
yep,
that inside. We're buying that company, OpenAI is, so that
yep.
it is, more formally part of OpenAI. And I think they said it made more sense for them to be part of OpenAI than this very weird, like, third party, but kind of first
Yeah.
party
I think
accessory
at first
thing.
it was very much a, do we have an idea here
It's exploratory
before
for
we
sure.
become friends forever? So
Yes.
Jony hired a variety of ex-Apple designers and engineers, including Scott Cannon, Evans Hankey, and Tang Tan. Evans Hankey was the head of design after Jony left, I think,
Yep.
for visual design, not like hardware, right? Like UI. Tang
Right.
Tan was hardware engineer overseeing a lot of products like the iPhone. Scott Cannon
I think a
was
hardware
not.
designer, not engineer.
Okay, thank you. Hardware designer. Scott Cannon was a name I didn't know, so I looked him up. Scott Cannon made Mailbox, which is one
Yeah.
of the greatest apps ever made.
Sure.
So much appreciated. And so now OpenAI have acquired them for $6.5 billion and is bringing.
Don't forget many nameless physicists and scientists that apparently work at
Well,
OpenAI
sure.
or
Physicists,
at IO, which
scientists, software
I read
engineers,
that as
hardware
being
engineers.
trying to explain away why all the senior big name people are designers. They're like, oh, but we also have engineers and scientists and physicists, so don't worry about that part.
I mean, well, my kind of read on that, I know. Here's the thing: we're going to set this conversation up. We're going to get into more detail a bit. Jason's very skeptical. I'm optimistic.
Yes.
So take
Yes.
that as your like top line
Yes.
before we get into this in full. My read on that was: here are the names you might know.
Yes.
Everybody else, maybe you don't.
Yeah, but the names that they
was kind
mentioned,
of how I took it.
all the senior people that they mentioned in their release are basically designers. It's Jony
Yeah.
getting the band back together. So
Definitely.
it's a team being led by designers, and then they mentioned, oh, but we also have engineers and scientists and physicists too. Don't worry about that.
Jony will be overseeing design for OpenAI and IO. All the IO team now work for OpenAI. Jony is remaining at Lovefrom and will be taking on no more major clients. So Jony continues to work with his clients and will be overseeing design for OpenAI.
Right. Good news for the king.
I mean, yeah, and Ferrari and Airbnb, which is like a really great collection.
Yep, classic.
Well,
when the
detail
king
here,
drives his
don't know if you knew
Ferrari
that.
to an Airbnb, then it's all
It's going to
set,
be
right?
all Jony all the time when he's talking into his little IO pin, and it'll be great. I don't know if you knew this part. I mean, this is interesting now. I've been listening to and reading a lot. Brian Chesky, the CEO of Airbnb, introduced Ive and Altman.
Oh,
That's
wow.
how they got to know each other. Because apparently at the moment Brian Chesky wants everyone to know this. He's just
I get it.
going
I mean,
around
look,
Silicon Valley being like, I did this.
You introduce a couple people and then they get married, and you got to take credit for it for the rest of
at the wedding.
their marriage.
When you go to the wedding,
yeah.
You know,
I
have to give a
introduced them.
speech.
You know, I did that.
I did this. This is because of me.
Yeah.
So few bits of information I want to give to kind of continue setting the scene, some quotes, etc. So Mark Gurman and Shirin Gafray at Bloomberg got to interview them both. Apparently, they got this interview because Mark Gurman got the tip that this was going to happen.
Yeah,
and they
very
said,
much like, hold it,
don't
and
tell
we'll give you
everyone,
exclusive
and
interview.
we'll give you quotes. We'll give you, you can sit down with Jony Ive, which, by the way, I love the thought of Mark Gurman and Jony Ive having a conversation.
It's amazing.
There's something about that is so funny to me.
Well, and if you got a good sense of humor, if you're Jony Ive, you sit down with Mark Gurman and say, I can't wait to hear what I'm doing next.
Yes.
Right? Tell me.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, when he did it again, though, right? Which is wild.
Yeah, he did it again.
Somebody inside of this organization is talking to him. Like,
yep.
Mark,
of course.
I heard John Gruber say this recently. Like, Mark Gurman's, like, tendrils, he didn't say these words, they're like, he is embedded. Like everywhere.
Yeah, and for a long time. The other people kind of come and go, but he's been doing it for a very long time. Yeah.
He has got it.
Absolutely.
Right. So here's some quotes. This is from Jony Ive. I have a growing sense that everything I've learned over the last 30 years has led me to this place and to this moment. That's a Jony Ive quote.
Okay.
Quote from the Bloomberg article. The takeover of I/O will provide OpenAI with about 55 hardware engineers, software developers, and manufacturing experts, a team that will build what Ive and Altman expect to be a family of devices. This is from Sam Altman. In the same way that the smartphone didn't make the laptop go away, I don't think our first thing is going to make the smartphone go away. It is a totally new kind of thing. And Jony Ive on the Humane AI pin and the rabbit, those were very poor products. There has been an absence of new ways of thinking expressed in products. In the video that they made, which was their wedding video,
Yeah,
essentially.
Johnny and Sam
Which
take a.
I
I'm
loved
surprised the
it.
Airbnb guy wasn't waiting for them in the cafe to say, "Hey, you guys."
He was filming.
Norm.
Brian Chesky worked
R.I.P.
the
Norm.
camera.
Yep.
I think it's actually worth me saying at this point that I absolutely adore Jony Ive, which I think listeners of this show probably know. So again, that colors my whole thing.
And I
loved it. I loved that video.
Over Jony Ive.
I know
am
you are.
so over Jony Ive. I think he did some great work in the 90s and in the 2000s, and it's the mid 2020s now, and that since Steve Jobs died, I'm just going to lay it out there. Since Steve Jobs died, he has not had a collaborator who can tell him no and work with him, and instead he was given free reign to do Sir Jony Ive things, and I think he's to blame for a lot of the mistakes Apple has made since then. And so I'm super over him. I'm tired of hearing him talk. I'm tired of his highfalutin words.
Never
I am
tired of it.
so sick of Jony Ive.
I'm absolutely could not get enough of it. I'm so happy we're in this world where he's speaking. So this is the difference between the two of us. I love that he's giving interviews. I love that he's showing up in places. This is fantastic. This is all I've ever wanted from Jony Ive, is just to hear more of what he has to say. Mm-hmm. From a Wall Street Journal article. The product will be capable of being fully aware of a user's surroundings and life, will be unobtrusive, able to rest in one's pocket or on one's desk, and will be a third core device a person would put on their desk after a MacBook Pro and an iPhone. Altman said that the device isn't a pair of glasses, and that Ive had been skeptical about building something to wear on the body. And Altman said, we both got excited about the idea that if you subscribe to ChatGPT, we should just mail you a new computer and you just use those. So that's all of my quotes and stuff. I just wanted to set all of that information. I think it's helpful to know what they're thinking about. You wrote an article which essentially was an expanded version of what you just said, that you just think this is nonsense,
marketing,
I guess?
Marketing BS.
Yeah.
And yes. I think about Jony Ive. I'm very skeptical of Jony Ive and the fact that I think Apple made the right decision to make him in charge of things in the days after Steve Jobs died, because they really didn't want to be perceived as having lost their soul, right? But Jony Ive, a couple of things. I mean, again, he came as a young designer to a really broken Apple. Steve Jobs saw something in him. They clicked. They worked together. But again, Steve Jobs had incredible product sense, really was trying to make devices for the rest of us. And there is nothing about Jony Ive on his own that suggests he's interested in the rest of us. He's really interested in building an amazing driverless car with no steering wheel and a gold watch, and of course working with Ferrari and the King and things like that. Very high design. He doesn't strike me as somebody. He's a very rich man who has had incredible success and runs in very highfalutin circles, and I just don't feel like he is in contact with that other part. And I think Steve Jobs honestly was. I think that was one of the brilliant things about him. And designers are amazing. I've worked with many incredibly talented designers over the years, but you can't just constraints are very important. And being somebody who's thinking about the product in a way that is different from the designer and can say no, that was the thing Steve Jobs did incredibly well. And they had a very, very fruitful, legendarily fruitful partnership. But since then, he's been the man in the white room talking about this highfalutin stuff and shipping these products that are, it's more important that there are fewer ports on a laptop, because then it's more of a monolith and that the laptop be useful. And it's possible I'm ascribing too much of this directly to him, but I feel like the design sense of Apple was built by him, and they were given free reign after Steve died to do whatever. And so Jony being in charge of a team whose big names are other designers makes me deeply skeptical. And I know I've heard through the grapevine, friends of friends, that, there are a lot of really good, talented engineering types. We have the statement about the physicists and scientists. That's great to hear. But Jony's in charge, and maybe Sam Altman. But I'm skeptical that Sam Altman can bring to the party anything that Steve Jobs did. But if Jony's in charge and he's Sir Jony and he's so intimidating, I feel like you are replicating unless he's really changed and that his time away from Apple and building this new product has made him feel very different about it, I am just fundamentally skeptical that getting the band back together after you've all made a huge amount of money is probably more about wanting to see those people again and take $6 billion from the AI bros than it is about actual creativity. Look, they're very talented. Maybe they will make something amazing, but having Jony be the head of it makes me deeply skeptical because I've seen what happened when he was given all the latitude, and I think that it was very bad for Apple in the long run. But there are other reasons too. I texted you and Steven last week when this happened, and I said, that they're furious at the Humane people because those Humane people did that AI pin and it was a flop. And like, not only do they have to say, no, we're not doing an AI pin, but come on, they're probably kind of doing an AI pin. Maybe it's like, oh, but it's not a pin. It's a thing that you put in a pocket or put on your desk or whatever. But like, what else could it be? They've said it isn't a screen and it isn't a wearable. So it's basically like an extrusion and of OpenAI into the world through an aluminum, thing that looks like an iPod Shuffle. Like, okay, but like we already talked about this with the AI pin. First off, a lot of language about regretting that they unleashed the smartphone on the world, because all of these companies that try to do this try to explain that what they're really looking for is to save us all from our smartphones, which we love and everybody loves and are incredibly successful, and none of us need to be saved from them. I believe that very strongly. The market doesn't want to not buy smartphones. And second, you're left with all of those other issues, which is, okay, why is that better than using AI on your phone or your earbuds or your watch or your laptop? What does this device like? Why do I have a laptop and a phone on my desk and this thing when presumably my phone can do what this thing does? It's really, I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm saying look, Myke, I spent 2 days because I didn't want to give a knee-jerk reaction that this was a load of BS. I spent 2 days thinking about it. And the fact is, I do think this is a load of BS for a lot of different reasons. And I'm not saying that in the end, behind the AI hype and the Jony Ive hype, there might be something tangible. I'm saying that there is so much AI hype here and there is so much Jony Ive hype here. And when I look at the last few years and what other people have thought about or tried with hardware that's connected to AI that isn't just a smartphone or accessory, it doesn't make sense. So I look at this and I think $6 billion of OpenAI stock, so it's kind of play money, sort of. And these two people who have been responsible for huge amounts of hype in various areas over time, you put it all together, and I cannot walk away. I'll just say BS is short for something, and I've never used that word on Six Colors until last week because I feel very strongly the scent of BS marketing here, the scent of Quibi, the scent of Humane is strong with this announcement. Not saying it can't be something, because it is a whole bunch of talented people and the leader in AI stuff right now. I'm just saying I was shocked at how many people just took this announcement and are like, oh, wow, great, amazing, this is going to be awesome. I think Federico said Apple is cooked at one point when he saw this too.
Well, in our defense, that news broke while we were recording.
I know,
so we were just very excited.
It's very hard when there's breaking news like that. But all I can say is I spent 2 days.
It's pretty huge breaking news, right?
It is huge. It is huge breaking news. I get it. Yeah. I get it. So I took 2 days to be like, I'm going to think about this a lot because I don't want to come out with a knee-jerk reaction that is everything, old man yells at cloud, everything is bad. I didn't want to do that. But after a couple of days, I can't find anything other than deep skepticism that this is nothing.
Can I make more of my rebuttals? I have been writing them down on my little notepad here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just think we're not having a debate. Well, we are having a debate, I guess. So for me, and I think,
I should say I let you go second because I saw it in the notes that you wanted me to go first, and then you were going to say Myke is more optimistic, and I thought, well, I could lean back and let Myke say his thing and then demolish it, but I was like, no, I'm gonna say my thing, and then I'm gonna let you go. So go ahead,
and then you'll get another chance afterwards if you want it. So I think for me, like I just can't help but watch this and feel excited because I love technology. And if I just take them on face value, which I think is, it's a
You like
way to be.
imagining about technology that might
Yeah,
exist?
yeah.
Sure.
But yes, though I do, right? Like I do. I am a technology optimist. Like I love technology. I am an enthusiast, and so when something comes along, I often take an enthusiast view. Like I'm enthusiastic for it until I use it, and can then make up a second opinion, right? Because it's like all you can do is take the information you're given, and you can choose to do with that what you want. You can say it's BS, or you can be like, okay, let me take them at their word. If I take them at their word and it's great, that's awesome. If I take them at their word and it's terrible, that's also fun, right? Like I can pick them apart and see what that's like. And I think it's fair that we would all agree that having talented people can produce good products, right? Like if you want to produce good products, you need good talent. And I expect that nobody right now can attract talent for hardware like Jony can.
Mm-hmm.
Like I expect right now everyone wants to go there because, well, maybe not everyone, more than enough people. I would expect there are more than enough people want to, like, he could take anyone he needs, right? That's what I would assume. I don't know that, but I think designers, hardware and software designers would look to him.
Designers,
I would love
sure.
the opportunity.
Sure.
I would love the opportunity to work with him, and
sure.
Maybe engineers too. Who knows, right?
Maybe,
so,
but remember, a lot of those engineers probably worked on stuff while he was at Apple.
Sure.
And there's a question about how they feel about that, and that's my question. Is I have no doubt that he's going to have great design talent. I wonder if the leadership is design. If you're a hardware engineer who is really excited about working with Jony Ive, like, are you that excited if it's just on him? Because we've seen what happens when he has that level of power, and it didn't really go well at Apple. So yeah, maybe, but I'm sure they will recruit some great people.
Just to go through some movie points, we mentioned the gold Apple Watch. Lots of people bring up the gold Apple Watch. Gold Apple Watch was ridiculous. However, it was alongside the Apple Watch. The Apple Watch, which is a product which functionally basically the same since it started,
Sure.
right? Like he was ridiculous in making a gold one, but the product was still good, right?
Yeah. And my point there is more. I wonder how connected Jony remains to regular people, given how it's a $2,000 jacket and
but
a collab with Ferrari.
Any people who make hardware like connected to regular people, like the types of salary, like you've been to Apple Park, they're not regular people there, right? Like they're not, and neither am I, neither are you. Like, who are we regular people? Probably not, right?
Well,
like, I don't know what that means.
Okay, all right. I think that there's a real difference between living in Silicon Valley, which is a bubble into itself, and having the King and Ferrari as clients and stuff like that.
It's a smaller bubble, right? That's for sure.
World of high design that Sir Jony floats
look,
in.
Of course, I read enough of his stuff to know that he is about as high on your own supply as a designer can be, right?
Yep.
Now, I like to read that stuff.
It's a good supply. Is that the argument?
Yeah, I mean, but it's why I like designers in general tend to be, because you kind of have to be, because you have to as a designer most of the time sell your product to someone else, right? You're constantly selling your idea to someone, and so you have to really believe in yourself. Anyway, the car, you mentioned the driverless car. Yeah, ridiculous, but consider the source. That's the information we know. That might have been one of the 12 ideas, right? One of the ideas is driverless.
It could be. We don't know anything about it. All I can do is look at what we know about the 15 years at Apple that Jony Ive was there without Steve and make some guesses. Somebody could come to me and say, look, I'm Johnny's best friend, and I worked with him at Apple every step of the way. And Jony was always saying, no, don't do that highfalutin like nonsense. We need to ground this and be more like what Steve would want and what regular people would want. And they could say that. I just, based on the evidence and the reports, I don't believe it. I just don't believe it.
So, Vision Pro, it is what it is, right? That's what it is. However,
Yes.
remember the reporting, and we all agreed with this idea at the time, and I think we still do now. What that shouldn't have been, which is the thing that he vetoed, is that there is a piece of hardware in your house and it beamed to the Vision Pro. Apparently, Jony was the one who came in and said, no, you can't do that. If you can't put it all on the thing, you can't make it. So that was some reporting at the time, which I agree
Right,
with.
right. He's also responsible for the screens that face out that show your eyes, though.
Yeah,
According to those
which is a
same
ridiculous
reports.
idea, but who knows?
And the 3D knitted band on the back, which is probably incredibly expensive to make. I'm sure that
I let
Jony
you
Ive
speak for a long time, Jason.
was involved.
All right, I'm just trying to give my rebuttals here. Nobody's perfect. His portfolio is unmatched, right? Like, and I understand what you're saying. In the last 15 years, what has he done? The Apple Watch, right? That was probably the last success.
Conceded. It's because that's not my point. But yes, I will concede absolutely that this guy is a legend. I said that in my article too. Absolutely a legend. And rightfully so. Absolutely.
One of the things that is intriguing to me is like a quote from the New York Times. I shoulder a lot of responsibility for what these things, the iPhone, have brought us. And something I find interesting in that, well, one, it is fascinating to me as time goes on, the amount of people involved in the iPhone who regret it. Like someone from a long time ago who shared this. Do you remember Lauren Brichter, who created Tweety?
Yep.
So this is this was like the Twitter client. Twitter ended up buying it. Actually, it was like a third-party Twitter client.
Yeah.
But Lauren invented Pull to Refresh.
Yes, he did.
And regretted it so much later on. And it is really intriguing. Like I find it kind of a fascinating.
Don't forget the Flappy Bird guy. The Flappy Bird guy made an addictive game and was like, I regret everything. Take it away.
So I find that interesting, right? That like and wonder, like the thing is, if he has ideas, like genuinely feels like he has a whole set of new ideas, I want to see what they are.
Sure.
I don't think that I don't believe they will necessarily be good. But if Jony has taken all this time away from creating consumer technology and now is like, I want to get back in this game in a big way, I am very intrigued to see what ideas he has. And that's kind of my conceit for this. I don't think it's all going to be good. I'm just intrigued to see what it is he says.
I don't agree. I'm very interested in what this is and what it does. I felt like there was a real groundswell of, oh, amazing, welcome back, this is going to be so great. And I'm like, for all the reasons detailed, it's really just kind of an empty announcement about people that I'm very skeptical about doing the work. But do I want to see it? Of course. Yes, it will be. This is like you saying, I love everything he says and all those interviews and all that. Is like, I find it fascinating, but I do not love it. But like, am I glad that he surfaces for his desert island discs? Of course I am.
I don't agree with everything he says. I just love that we get to hear him, because this was my thing about Jony is I always assumed he had things to say, because of course he did. He would pop up in the White Room and talk, but he never spoke outside, right? Ever. He never gave interviews, nothing. And one of the things that I've been happy about in his post-Apple life is he's talking. Like, it gives me the potential of a thing that I hope one day, which is the man writes a book, right? Because I want to read that book, right? Sure. And I feel like that
it's a very expensive book, though. It's going to cost like $2,000.
It would cost $1,000 for the paperback. But like, I feel like we're getting closer now to the possibility of him actually doing that, because he's opening up now in a way that he never did before. But I think we have, as we often do, we've settled on we're in a similar place, which is like, we're very intrigued to see what comes of this.
Yeah, get your popcorn ready. Absolutely.
Because this is what the core from it for me is like. My optimism is just in that I am excited about whatever this is, whether it's good, bad, forgettable, like, because that is just interesting to me. This is like what I said about the Vision Pro. Like, I didn't think necessarily it was going to work, but whether it worked or it didn't work was going to be interesting.
Oh, and absolutely.
I think it has been.
Worth analyzing and worth considering. I mean, that's actually why I thought the Humane AI pen was interesting too, is because it was a lot to think about. I don't disagree with any of that. I just really, my reaction is more to the fact that I think I just got finally fed up with two organizations, or at least two trends. Jony Ive, the sort of like the hype bubble around Jony Ive wherever he goes, and the AI hype machine, and they came together in this, and everybody is out there doing, reacting to it like, just, it feels like deeply uncritically to me. And I'm like, am I missing it? And I spent a couple of days thinking about it, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling it. I don't think this
Yeah.
has got a good chance of being a thing. Not to say that I'm not interested, because I love a game on moment, and this feels like a
Yeah.
game on moment, right?
Yes.
Although we will have to talk, we'll have to pivot to talking about what this means for Apple in a minute, because I I am a little puzzled about that part of it. But anyway, like, you should keep your optimism, because I think there's a difference between thinking, I don't think this is anything that's going to succeed, and they shouldn't do it, and I don't want to see it. That is so not true. I absolutely want to see it. And
Yep.
honestly, one of the things I came to in my piece was, look, do I think that Jony Ive is the person to lead this effort? I do not. However, if he has a different worldview than he did a few years ago, and has brought in a bunch of people who are not as famous and rich, and are hungrier than he is, and he's the elder statesman who is actually sliding into that Steve Jobs role a little bit, of telling a young designer, yes and no, slow your roll, not that, but this. Could they succeed? Of course, of course, and they're going to have the money, they're going to have the talent. Of course, they could succeed. I'm really skeptical of it, and I don't think that anything we've seen so far changes my opinion about that. But I'd like to see them try. I'd like to see a bunch of
Yep.
brilliant people try to do it. I'm also, I should say, when I say get the band back together, that doesn't always go very well. I worry that this is a bunch of people who made a lot of money at Apple who are now going to try to do it again. And you could say, yeah, but they're all brilliant and they did it once, so they'll do it again. Maybe, or maybe that's exactly who won't do it again.
The conditions are not the same, so it can't suggest anything, right? Like, it's like these people have a great portfolio, but it's a completely different ball game. Like, this is a completely different game,
and it's 20 years later.
Yeah, and I do believe, like, in the thing that you've positioned, that whether he is successful in it or not, I think he is setting himself up to be the, like, just the overseer, in that he has not joined OpenAI, right? And that he is continuing to work on Love from Work, right? That, like, and again, some people could see that he's like, oh, he's 1 foot in, 1 foot out on that. And it's like, I could understand that, but I could imagine it's a scenario of, like, I do not need to be involved in this every day. I will be the person that meets with everyone and I say, this is good, this is not, this is good, this is not, that kind of thing. But who knows? I have no idea. Like, we don't know. How would we know? And I guess all of this is to say, like, we're talking purely about, like, the hypothetical. Who even knows? Like, who even knows if an AI powered piece of hardware could ever work or be interesting in any way? We don't know that.
The thing that gives me the most pause about all of this is, I have racked my brain trying to think of what this thing could be, and so is everybody else, right? And then they say, oh, well, but it's not that, right? And it's like, oh, okay, it's not that, then what is it? And look, if they have come up with something that is beyond my imagination, and I see it and I go, oh, of course, then that'll be a really amazing moment. However, I spent 2 days trying to think about this, and I can't get there. So, like, but I'm leaving open the possibilities. Like, maybe they have really, cracked it. They've really figured it out, and they're like, this is the thing that we want to do. I'll also say, a lot of praise out there for Sam Altman, in that I think is not justified. But I will say this: I thought the positioning of, we're not coming for your laptop. We're not coming for your devices. This is meant to be us adding something wonderful and new to the world. I think that's brilliant positioning, because it's saying, we're not trying to be a computer or iPhone killer. Don't measure us that way. What we're going to do is different, and it's not meant to change the world in ways that you can't understand because your computer will be gone, or your what. Like, Sam Altman is sitting there with a MacBook Pro, and he's like, MacBook Pro is fine, right? Like, I think that's a masterful piece of positioning for them. So I'm going to give him credit for that, even though I don't think he's a product design genius or
No,
anything, and I
but
think the
apparently
ChatGPT has
this
kind of
is
fell into their product, but they've
yes.
got a good product, but they fell into it. They didn't like they were lucky to do it, but they did do it, and it's a residue of the other choices that he made. But I'm not sure I would call him a product genius, even close to even in the same universe as Steve Jobs. But
No.
that positioning of don't judge us as the secret stealth project that's going we're not a segue, right? Remember, there's like, oh, they're gonna it is gonna come out and it's gonna change how transportation in inner cities works, and then it was a segue and everybody's like, what? Like, don't do that. And so they didn't do that. They said, no, we're not gonna take your laptop away. That's not the goal of this. That's smart. That's super smart.
It seems like apparently that is his skill set. Like the more I hear people talk about him, it's just that like he's just very good at making you believe something, right? Because which is why
Well,
he
yeah,
can get
yeah, he's
infinite
very good
money.
at getting investments.
Yeah, and this is essentially he's trying to get the world to like invest their intention into this project of like, oh, we're just gonna make a third thing. My expectation for what this is, by the way, is it's just a little like honestly a pebble, like a stone. And sometimes it's in your pocket, sometimes it's on the desk, sometimes it's strapped to something, sometimes it's around your neck.
Sure.
Essentially like the AI pin, but I don't think
Sometimes
it
it's
has any screens. I don't think it
sometimes
has
it's
any of them.
attached to a drone that is hovering around you at all times.
I mean,
Who knows?
maybe, right? But like, it is in the John Syracuse parlance, the naked robotic core. That's what
Yeah,
I think this little
maybe
thing
so.
is,
Maybe
and
so.
you kind of interact with it, but really you're just having conversations with it all the time, and really it's just an interface for all of the stuff that ChatGPT will be able to do by 2027, which is when this product will be announced. Anyway.
Do you think that Tim could convince Donald Trump that the iPhones coming in from China and India are just naked robotic cores?
I think he could try. I think he could try.
Right. But his
you know,
son, but Barron is standing in the corner going, he's lying to you, Dad. Don't believe him. He's like, oh no. The kid got me.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Vitally. Vitally is bringing in a new era for customer service productivity with their all-in-one platform. Vitaly's collaborative workspace combines your customer data with all the capabilities you expect from today's project management and work platforms. With Vitally, you can measure the effectiveness of OKRs and operational strategies and customer outcomes at scale thanks to their Goals feature. Goals allows you to track the progress of your accounts against target metrics, meaning you can standardize goal setting across the board so you know exactly how effective your processes really are. And best of all, it's designed for today's customer success team. That's why Vitally operates with unparalleled efficiency, improves net revenue retention, and delivers best-in-class customer experiences. Vitally is offering a free pair of AirPods Pro for every upgrade listener who books a qualified meeting. So if you're a customer success decision maker, schedule your call today by going to vitally.io/upgradefm. That's Vitally, Vitally, vitally.io/upgradefm for a free pair of AirPods Pro when you schedule a qualified meeting. Thanks to Vitally for their support of this show and Relay. I want to talk a little bit about the effect that what this means for Apple, right? Because there is an Apple story here, obviously, because
there is.
Jony Ive now has gone and done. Jony Ive wanted to get back into technology, and he didn't go back to Apple. He did not fulfill on the collaborative partnership Apple, that Tim Cook said that they would have.
Speaking of marketing BS,
left.
yes.
Yeah. So,
I want to start with the multi-industry dynamic here before we talk about like inside what does Apple want to do and how do they want to work with ChatGPT, OpenAI, IO, which is the larger dynamic. So Microsoft is a huge investor in OpenAI.
Yep.
Sort of, right? And again, there's a public benefit corporation and there's a nonprofit and it's a whole mess.
And there's a way out. Like OpenAI have a way out of that relationship too.
Yeah. So, and the Microsoft relationship, actually, like Microsoft and Apple compete in some areas, but in most areas they don't. Honestly,
they're not. It's not like that anymore with them. I think that they really are more friends than enemies now.
I think you're right. I think even other than if they tried to do a deal and somebody was like, "Wait a second, this is all desktop computers now," and even then they might be like, "Yeah, but desktop computers, who needs them?" But here's the thing that I keep coming back to, which is OpenAI's greatest competitor is Google. Last week, Google I/O happened. I/O. There's so many I/Os. Last week, Google I/O happened, and we're not talking about it because of this Jony Ive thing. Well played, I guess. but Google is all in on AI. Google, after being a little skeptical of it, and playing that game of like, oh, but if we do this, we'll kill our search revenue, is now full Steve Jobs, where full iPod Nano, where they're like, well, our search revenue is going away anyway, so we better be the replacement. And they announced like 3 different replacements for it at I/O. But anyway, they are OpenAI's biggest threat, I think. And Google owns Android.
Yes.
Like, Google owns Android, and I know Android can be modified and it's open and all of these things, right? I hope you heard my rolling eyes when I said open, but yeah. Okay. So you could build something on Android, everybody does it, and have it not be Android or not be Google Android and be different and all that. It's fine. You could do that. And OpenAI could do that. And this embedded device that they're making might even have Android at its core. Who knows?
I was thinking probably at its core, this could be Android, unless Jony just can't bring himself to do it.
I mean, maybe. I mean, but if it's Android, but you strip everything out of it that you don't want, then, fine. It's an open source operating system. It's fine. Whatever.
Humane built their own OS. No, I know that's not a lot to say, but it's like,
no,
there are some companies they can't bring themselves to do it.
Maybe they can build on Darwin.
Else.
But this is my point: is ChatGPT is the leader, but Google Gemini is coming on strong, and there are other players too. I know, but I'm just saying, if you think about it, if the maker of Android is one of the major players in the AI space, literally everybody else should want to make deals with Apple, because the smartphone is the place to be. And Apple is struggling in AI right now. And I do not know why there isn't, and perhaps there is somewhere, a line out the door at Apple Park with the owners and board members and CEOs of every other AI company.
Good point.
And I'm not saying that Apple needs to buy an AI company. Maybe they do. Maybe that would be a cultural infusion, or maybe they would buy it and destroy it with their own cultural, who knows? But what I'm saying is, if I'm an AI company and I think smartphones are huge and are going to be around for a while, which they are, I don't like that Google is going to inject their AI everywhere in Android. And I know, yes, again, maybe you can make a deal with Samsung that's a little bit different and all that, but really, it's a super big threat. Your one of your 2 big members of the duopoly of smartphones has their own thing that they're going to prefer.
Yep.
So Apple, this is the thing that is curious, right? Is like, they're going to make this thing, and it's not inside Apple, it's inside OpenAI, but it's got a bunch of Apple people at it. And does Apple view them as a competitor, or is it additive? My guess is that if it's a thing that resembles anything Apple is selling, they'll view it as a competitor. But also, they made their first external AI deal with OpenAI. Surely everybody at I/O recognizes the place that Apple holds in society, and when they talk about Apple products by name in that video, it's very clear that they're sending that signal that they get it. So what does that mean? Do they think they don't need Apple in any way because it's a post-smartphone world? I have a hard time believing
they're saying it's not, right? They are saying,
but they're saying it's not.
Whether
right?
they believe it,
and I have to
or
believe,
not.
Even if we replace the smartphone with something in 10 years or 20 years, there's going to be a ramp to it, and ramping off of the smartphone to lead to the thing is probably what you would do to get there. So right, you're not going to there's one day where you pitch your smartphone and replace it with a dealie from I/O, right? It's gonna work with it. So anyway, I want to set that as the stage here, because what I find interesting about this, and a bit of a head scratcher, is OpenAI and Apple, to me, are natural partners.
Yes,
because they're not Google.
Yeah, I want to add on to what you were saying about Google and the threat of Android, which is how close Google and Samsung have become in the last few years. Google and Samsung were at odds for a long time, and they are now incredibly.
They're strategizing together. They're very clearly strategizing together.
Products together. They develop hardware and software in lockstep, and Google pays Samsung an obscene amount of money. I don't know what the amount is, but people always say it's a very large amount of money to embed Gemini into Samsung phones, because essentially, Android is Samsung, right? To the consumer, Android Samsung sells so many Android phones, and Samsung is the biggest competitor to Apple. They are the two biggest device makers, right? Like their devices sell the most,
Yeah.
and so it really is it's Samsung and Google
Ugh.
versus Apple and
Everyone else.
everyone else. And I think that's a great point. And yes, it makes so much sense for OpenAI and Apple to work together. The ship
It
has
does.
sailed on one buying the other, right? Whichever way around it goes now, because obviously OpenAI could
Yeah.
never buy Apple, but OpenAI is no too expensive, right? Whether correctly or not, they just are.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even think that it makes sense to do it. But I wonder, as you wondered, and me and you were talking about this in the last couple of days, like, is there a partnership that makes sense here where these products could tie into the iPhone
Right.
in a way that we have not seen
Right.
other products. And like, why would Apple do this? Right.
Well, so
So there are a
let me
few
sketch
reasons.
this. Let me sketch
Yeah.
this for you. First off,
Yeah.
I really believe that with all the compute and the battery and the software and the connectivity, that smartphones aren't going anywhere. Because like you
Right.
can put a cell modem and a processor in these little things, but oh my god, then you've got a separate cell plan, and is it talking to your phone at all, and how, or is it only in the cloud services, and what's going on there? So the smartphone, very powerful, and then Apple is making all these other constellation of devices, right? Your watch, your AirPods, maybe glasses in the future, right? Those are all going to be connected to Siri and Apple Intelligence, either in the cloud or on the smartphone. Okay. So if they're making one of those, Apple's like, I don't know, like, we really want to sell more Apple Watches. But if they're not making one of those, if their pitch is, no, we want to make a different kind of product, and you're Apple, maybe you say, look, we're obviously headed in this direction too, but we're not making a product like you are right now. And more broadly, we have a partnership. People are going to use OpenAI products on all of our devices. Easy for me to say. People are going to use OpenAI products on our devices, and we want to make those integrated even better than they already are. They can use our stuff. They can use your stuff. It's great. You're state of the art. We love you. They say all of that. And they're like, okay, so what we want, if you're Apple, is I want we'll make your dingus work with our stuff, but your dingus needs to be. It works both ways. Your dingus needs to be
Best.
it needs to be good, but our Apple Watch or our glasses or our AirPods or just our phone also need to be that good. It needs to work both ways, where we'll
Oh,
give you
okay.
access, but we want it both ways, because if people don't want a dingus and they just want to watch, or they just want AirPods or whatever, we want it to run both ways. There is an argument to be made there. Also, as it's sitting in our notes, it's been here all along. We should say there may be some very serious legal reasons why Apple's going to have to open up its APIs to things like smartwatches and other devices like that
Like
in
the
some
Department of
markets.
Justice.
And if that's the case, then the jig is up a little bit with something like this, where OpenAI could say, well, we are kind of like an Apple Watch, so we should be able to connect and take calls and share the same phone number and use the APIs and all of that. But again, if I'm OpenAI, and maybe if I'm Apple, but definitely if I'm OpenAI, I want to have that conversation with Apple. I want to say, we want to be number one on your platform. We want to be the best, and we would like our thing to be the best on your platform, because we'll work with Android, but like, Google, right? They're doing their own thing. So it's a really interesting question. I feel like OpenAI kind of needs, in this moment, Apple more than Apple needs OpenAI, because Apple could say, we can build whatever you're building. They could say that. But I think both companies would probably be stronger if they work together, even if they can't, merge with each other. I think that they would probably be stronger if they work together.
Yeah. And they can use this as an opportunity to do the thing that they might be forced to do. And
Yes.
I think if Apple were to create a set of API, maybe an SDK, like whatever it might be, it actually provides them with a competitive advantage for the next wave of devices. I think the last 2 years, last year, should have shown Apple that maybe they're not And maybe they don't need to be best placed technology wise to
Yeah.
deal with this next wave of computing, but they can continue to provide a necessary platform
Yes.
for that. So, like,
Yes.
everyone's talking about how great Macs have become for running models, and like,
Yeah.
and they're very power efficient, and you can do a lot of it locally. And they've happened to fall into that because of Apple Silicon. Well, great. Just harness that then. And like
Right.
similarly, like you create a set of APIs which are super good at integrating these new batch of devices, whatever they might be,
Yes.
including something like the Ray-Bans, right? Like you all
Mm-hmm.
of that stuff, and then you become the platform that is necessary for this new wave of devices to work.
Right. And
And you can also
perhaps,
continue making your stuff,
yeah.
but then it doesn't need to be all on you.
And perhaps that is also a way for you to blunt some of like Meta Ray-Bans, right? They want you to be in Facebook's cloud, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're Apple and you're like, oh, well, we created APIs now, so the Meta Ray-Bans can just pair to the iPhone. But when they do that, now the grip on you from Meta is less, right?
Yeah.
Because now there's Apple
Yeah.
stuff in there, and Meta
Yeah.
is more like a maker of sunglasses than it is maybe an AI provider, but that's it. And
Mm-hmm.
you potentially say, like, there's nothing stopping Apple from developing more AI models. I mean, one of the strategies here might be you keep working on your models, and I hate to say it, but it's actually a little like CarPlay Ultra, where it's like the car's got to have an infotainment system, right? A
Yeah.
default. And then somebody can bring their own if they want to, and that's CarPlay Ultra, and it lays on top. But there has to be something underneath, because you can't have a car that can't be used unless you've got a modern iPhone with a current version, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a little like that, which is like Apple's not going to ship an iPhone without an AI model and without private cloud compute models, honestly, going forward, because I think because of the whole security and privacy kind of thing, I think Apple's going to continue to build its own models, and it should. But like that doesn't preclude them from also saying use whatever model you want. And if one of the models takes off, Apple's like, we're there. It just plugs in, and then use that one. And if you're like, I don't like those guys, they invested somewhere that I don't like, or they did some marketing that I thought was gross. I'm going to switch to these guys. Apple will be like, great. Just, you cancel your subscription with them, you start up with them, you flip the switch here, and now you're using their models on your iPhone, and it's fine,
this
right?
scenario that we're positioning would be so funny because it would mean that Apple became the open company. Like anyone, we'll welcome anyone. But
Yeah. Well, I'm sure
that's
Google
where they
will do it.
are.
I'm sure Google will do it too, right? But Google seems like much more of a threat than Apple does.
Google will have the opportunity to make a decision.
Having a good AI model
Yeah.
is existential for Google, and it's not existential for Apple. Apple can partner.
They
If
can do
Apple
it. Yeah, they could do it different
if
ways.
Apple decided we can't
Google's
do this,
fundamental business is at risk. Apple's is no. Apple's is not
it's
at
not
risk.
as
Apple's
much as risk.
fundamental business. It's not.
It's not.
There is a potential for risk, right? There is.
Of course.
Google's is current. Like their risk is now.
Yeah.
We're hearing it. We're
Google's
seeing
house
it.
is on fire.
Yes. Apple's
house is
Even
on a cliff with maybe there could be a landslide or an earthquake sometime, but Google's house is literally on fire right now.
all of Apple's current problems are actually not to do with AI, right? Like the things that are actually affecting them. Like from a
Right.
marketing perspective, they look silly, they look ridiculous, like whatever. But that's not going to stop people from buying iPhones. Like their problems are the Google search deal, the falling apart of the App Store, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. But even if you take all of that out and you look at their business in selling hardware,
Yeah.
it's a pretty good business. And the
Yes.
only way that it's going away is if either smartphones go away or Apple's products are so limited that people stop buying iPhones and only buy Android phones because Apple's limited. So you could argue that although there's the pride of building it yourself, and maybe your long-term goal is nobody's going to need a third party. It's competition, right? Which they don't like, but nobody's going to need a third party because our base models are going to be so good that it doesn't matter. But, like when they added Outlook support or Exchange support to the iPhone, they were like, yeah, but sometimes your company wants this or that, and so you let them, right? Like they can have that as the goal, that the base is so good that you don't need anything else. But in the meantime, you open it up to everybody, and at that point, like if you've got really nice hardware and people are comfortable with your operating system and they have an Apple Watch or AirPods and they like those too, and your preferred AI, whatever it is, works great with it, like you're still going to buy an iPhone and Apple's still going to be happy about it. So a lot less existential. Not to say that the iPhone is forever, but Google has to press, and Google, like you were saying, Google will have to make a decision about like how open do you want to be when you need this to work for
Yep.
your business. You need Google search to be replaced with Google AI search, or you're losing
Yes.
all of your revenue.
Where Apple can, they'll lose a big chunk of their revenue if the Google search gets replaced, but they can replace it with ChatGPT search, Perplexity search, and it doesn't affect them. It
People still
doesn't
buy
affect them
iPhones.
at the core. People
It
still buy
doesn't.
the iPhone. And you know what they make a ton of money from? Selling iPhones. Like that's where the money comes from. It's from
Yeah.
selling the iPhones.
Yeah.
And
Even with
this
tariffs, yes.
scenario, this scenario means that the iPhone continues to be a very important part of the puzzle. And of all of the potential companies that you could imagine them working with, why not the one where they already have an existing partnership and the other one is the guy, right? Like, would you work with Jony again? Do you know him and trust him?
Right.
Like, it's, that like you can imagine, or
Well,
you can imagine a scenario where is this going to be the company that screws us? Maybe it's less likely if it's Jony. Like, I don't know, but like you can imagine there is a different interpersonal scenario going on here.
think about the idea that Apple execs are talking to IO and talking to Sam Altman and Jony, and under strict secrecy, they get a first glimpse about what this thing is, and Apple says, "Oh, we're not going to make anything like that." That's actually good, right? That's
Yeah.
Apple saying we don't think that's worth the investment. We've got our other platforms. We're going in a bunch of different areas. That is not a thing we're ever going to make. That's good, right? Because I mean, and again, is that part of what IO and OpenAI are saying when they say, "Oh, it's not this and it's not that," and you get to keep your MacBook Pro and all that? On one level, I think that's what they're saying is, look, we're not making something that Apple is planning on making. That's not what we're trying to do here. And who knows? Who knows? But if that was the case, then Apple would probably be a lot less likely. They'd be like, "Oh, you're trying to do something completely different from where we're trying to go, and that's fine. We'll work together. That's great because our Apple Watch gets better when we're working with you, and our AirPods work better when we're working with you." The danger here is that Apple's like, "No, all of this is existential. We have to build it ourselves." And I know there's that maxim that comes back to like when the Mac was being judged based on the performance of Internet Explorer, and Apple did Safari because they're like, we have to control. And people I think they call that the Cook Doctrine, but like it dates to Steve Jobs. It's very much we got to control the things that matter, if we can, right? Because there's that. If you can, you got to try. Well, having an AI model is and if we can, but having that doesn't preclude you from opening it up and saying, look, we're going to work with other devices and we're going to work with other models because what we're going to do, because that's not a thing we can control right now, right? And we'll try. Like Safari, when it came out, was like, okay, this is interesting. And over time, it got better. And that happens a lot too. But you can have that project running and still work with others in the background. So
Yep.
it's a risk that Apple is like, no, we got this covered. But I feel like there's a real opportunity because I do feel like if you look at what Google is doing, everybody else is not Google. So they should probably be working together.
This episode is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Going online without ExpressVPN is like leaving a door unlocked when you leave your house. Most of the time, you're fine. But what about the risk that someone untrustworthy is around? When you connect to an unencrypted network in cafes, hotels, airports, your online data is not secure. Someone on the same network could gain access to your information, passwords, bank logins, credit card information, and other things that you don't want in someone else's hands. ExpressVPN stops hackers, bad people from stealing your data by creating a secure encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. There are loads of reasons to choose ExpressVPN over other VPNs. It's super secure. It would take a hacker with a supercomputer over 1 billion years to get past ExpressVPN's encryption. It's easy to use. You just fire up the app and click one button to get protected, and it works on all your devices, phones, laptops, tablets, and more, so you can stay secure on the go. Plus, it's been rated #1 by top tech sites like CNET and The Verge. I have used ExpressVPN for years and years and years, and I'm very happy with it. They provided me with an account, but I also pay for it. I'm a big fan of it because it's super simple. It lives in my menu bar, and when I'm traveling, especially, I will fire up ExpressVPN and turn it on when I connect to the free Wi-Fi because I don't know those networks, I don't trust those networks, I don't own those networks. So how can I be sure about it? And then also, I can continue doing whatever it is I want to do. I can record podcasts, no problem. I'm not having latency issues, and the connection's not bad. I can watch video. It's simple to do, and it makes it easy, and it just gives me that peace of mind. It's just something I don't have to worry about, and I don't want to worry about. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/upgrade. That's expressvpn.com/upgrade to find out how you can get up to 4 extra months free. That is expressvpn.com/upgrade. Our thanks to ExpressVPN for supporting this show and all of Relay. It's rumor roundup time, Jason. So
Yeehaw.
I have 2 rumors today for you that are connected to the conversations that we've been having. So first up comes from Mark Gurman. They're actually both from Mark Gurman today, obviously.
Of course.
Mark reported that Apple is accelerating its plans for smart glasses, now aiming to release their first pair by the end of 2026.
They're not going to meet my deadline of 2025, but I think this shows you how long it takes for Apple to make a product, basically.
It's not easy. So as you'd expect, Apple are targeting to do essentially what Meta is doing. Cameras, microphones, speakers with support for talking to Siri and Apple Intelligence, all within a pair of glasses. This product is not expected to feature any kind of display, like what Google is doing with their XR project that they showed off at I.O. Of course, this is Apple's goal in the future for full AR glasses. Apparently, Mark said that Meta is expected to be shipping something with some kind of display in 2025. My thought on this is, all right, great. Like, this is the product that we want. Like, meet them where they are. By the time they get this product out, most likely Meta and Google will both be shipping products that have all of these features plus some kind of display technology.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see, but that is, and I think when you say their goal is full AR, I think that is the end goal.
Yeah.
First, I think the question is going to be, they're going to look at what Meta and Google are doing and saying, okay, should our first one have a little screeny spot on it like those where it's not full AR, but there's like a little place, a little dynamic island where we can put visual information separate? Or do we start with product 1 and then go on to product 2? Because I'm sure that Apple is well aware that the next step is to have some visual indication in there, because you can't go to full AR. It's going to take years to get there, but you could do what the competitors are doing.
Little heads-up display, kind of, little bit of ambient info.
Yeah, just a little bit. It really is like a notification center, or like it's a little tiny dab of screen in the way that it's been described by the people who've tried it. And it's a nice idea. And it's like, well, that's something we can do today, is essentially what they're saying. We can't do a whole thing, but we can do this little thing that when it's on, they can put some images on it, or some text on it, or whatever. It's not a full screen. It's not a Vision Pro. It's literally like a little thing in the corner of your Vision that, like little aliens are beaming you messages. That's spoilers for the 3-body problem. Anyway, that's the question, right? Like, so if you're Apple, do you say, look, we got to start somewhere. We're going to start with this thing. And we know that that's where they're going, and we're going there too, but we're going to start with this thing. Or are we going to hear in 6 months that from Mark Gurman that Apple actually has 2 different models in the works, one of which has a display and one of which doesn't. And then we hear a month later that they've decided to ship the one with the display in late 2026 instead of shipping the one without the display in mid 2026, because they've decided that they need to go there. That it wouldn't shock me if that's what ends up happening here, because that's their decision, right? It's like, ship the simpler thing or kind of leap over it and go to the one. And that a lot of that, it depends on Apple's internal, like, is that screen any good? Like they might try it and be like, oh, it's not good enough. Let's just ship this thing and we'll work on one that's better. Because Apple does that, right? Where sometimes their competitors ship something and everybody's like, why isn't Apple doing it? And Apple says, yeah, we looked at that and we don't like it. And maybe they're right and maybe they're wrong, but like that can happen where they look at what Meta or Google is doing and go, we tried that. It's not very good. Do people like that? It's not good. We could do better. And that's a tough decision for them to make then.
As part of this product reshuffling, Apple have shelved their plans for an Apple Watch with a camera. Thank God.
No more,
Thank
no
God.
up the nose FaceTime for you. It's
Here's my
fine.
question, Jason. Will they still ship AirPods with cameras, which is a thing
Gurman
that was
says
rumored?
Gurman says they're still working on it. That article says they're still working on that.
I
So
know,
maybe.
but I wonder if they will. Like, because,
So here's the
yeah.
thing. We've been talking about this mythical forthcoming IO product, right?
Yep.
It's very clear that you have to have devices with cameras that will feed AI because
Sure.
it's useful. Who is that person? What is that sign? Where are we right now in cities? They use cameras because the GPS isn't reliable to look at the buildings and go, I know exactly where we are. To translate written things, to have a microphone that's not in your pocket so it can hear things, right? Like there are lots of reasons to have a device with a camera that can see. The glasses are one of them. The question is, can you do AirPods where they actually work, where they aren't occluded by hair, that it's actually useful to get something out of it? I am skeptical, but I see what they're trying. I'm just skeptical. And if they're doing the glasses, maybe they don't need to do the AirPods. I don't know. Because that's a slot that something like an IO product could slot in if it's got
Yep.
a camera on it, right? Like so, there is an ergonomic issue too, which is like if you have a shirt pocket or do you clip it on your shirt like an iPod Shuffle or something like that? Like probably you need something like that if you're thinking about an AI world. And if they don't have the glasses on, and lots of people have AirPods, is that a place? It feels to me it comes down to they have to build it and see if it gives them anything they can use or not. I have a hard time imagining it, but maybe they figured out how to do it.
Mark Gurman is also reporting a few pieces of news for WWDC this year. One is that the Apple Watch and Apple TV are going to see the touch of a big redesign like the other platforms.
Right.
Previously, Mark was unsure of how much change these platforms would see.
Mm-hmm.
This is interesting to me because I feel like the Apple Watch has already gone through a pretty big UI change
Yeah.
in the last year or two, but
It may just be some visual alignment, right, to
yeah.
make them all seem more of a kind, and that it's a light touch on the Apple Watch and the Vision Pro, which is why Mark Gurman hadn't heard that. But there's still going to be something. It's not necessarily radical, but they want them all to sort of feel like they're part of the family.
And also that Apple is planning on making their AI models open to developers to build within their own applications. This will be starting with the models that run on device, not the private cloud compute models. I think this is really interesting. I would be really intrigued to see what developers would be able to do with these models. Like, what can you use them for?
Right.
Because if the models are decent enough, could be a big benefit for a lot of use cases, like cheaper for developers and customers who don't have to supplement and pay for third-party API models, right? Because the
Right.
developer's not paying ChatGPT API cost, and also running on devices is better for the environment.
Yeah. Yeah. It comes down to how good the models are, but
Yeah,
I think a bunch of us talked about this. Ben Thompson has written about this a lot. Empowering app developers on your platform to build AI based features without having to bring your own model. And I would say also running your model as an app on an iPhone versus running the model provided by Apple, probably it will run better and it may be allowed to run longer than a model that's being run by an app where the system may kill it. I feel like there are probably some real advantages to using the APIs for Apple's own models. I think it's great news. I mean, whether people will use it or not, it depends on the inclination of the people and on how good the models are. apparently constantly being updated. That's great. But I love this idea. I love the idea because empowering app developers to build clever, interesting apps that use AI in different ways on your platform, leveraging the fact that you've got models that run on your device and that your devices have a lot of computing power built into them because of Apple Silicon. All of these things are good, right? Like this is, and honestly, I could have probably predicted this a year ago because tends to be what Apple does, right? They're like, well, this year it's for us because we're still figuring it out. And next year we open it
barely.
Yeah, well, I know. Well, that's. I mean, this is the whole sweet solution thing, right? Which is the iPhone came out and everybody's like, why isn't there an app store? And they're like, look, we are barely holding it together as it is. We don't know what we're doing. Give us some time. And then the next year there was an app store because they were ready. This is a little like that. We just like, look, we've just spent a very short amount of time getting any AI in here at all. Give us a moment. And so, but I think we've all come to assume the worst about so much of Apple behavior because of Apple's track record that we look at this and like, are they really going to give developers anything? It's like, well, they should. So good news, they are. I hope it's good. I hope the APIs are thoughtful. I hope the models are useful. And I hope that app developers can say, oh, this is great, because I was considering having to bring in a model that would run on the device inside my app that was bad, or have to use a cloud model that I don't like, or have to create a premium subscription tier so that I can go out to the cloud to use these APIs.
Or there are features I have the idea for that I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do because I'm not sure I'm going to be able to afford them. Because I don't know if my customers are going to want them, and then I'm kind of stuck
need a little scrap
paying for these keys.
Yeah, I just need a little scrap of AI here to do this little bit. It's like, you can't. And honestly, this is we joke about some of the bad implementations of Apple features, but like, if somebody else wants to use the summarization AI in their interface, they should be allowed to do that, right? Like, they should be allowed to do that. And it should be better, yes, of course, but like right now, you can't, right? You can't do it. So yes, of course they should be allowed to do that. And again, I want to emphasize, you could do it with a model that you put on the device from somewhere, but that's not going to be the same as using the blessed Apple API, Apple model on a device that might kill your app if you use too much power, right? Like, there are a lot of advantages to a blessed AI model running on device from Apple.
Yep. All right, let's finish out with an Ask Upgrade question for today's show.
Okay.
Thank you. I was going to prompt for the lasers.
Sort of a single laser. That's what I was thinking. Is like, it's a single Ask Upgrade. So is there just one laser, or are there many lasers? Because that's like, I'm over lasering it at that point. So
yeah, you don't want to, like, people. I don't know if that was a thing, that like the amount of lasers equated to.
I'm just wasting energy. I'm wasting power.
You don't want to. These are on-device lasers.
Does not correspond to the number of questions, but I'm just saying, if there's only one question, maybe there should only be one laser. We'll work on it. We'll figure it out.
And we get lots of questions. Again, please continue sending in your questions by going to upgradefeedback.com and send them in. Yes. The reason we have one question today is because we keep running really long on the show, but the summer of fun is coming, so there will be lots of time to answer
all Ask Upgrade. Yep.
But I wanted to do this one today because it was related. This question came from Matt, who says, Myke, what are your thoughts on the Meta Ray-Bans, and have they changed at all given recent life changes? Congratulations. Thank you, Matt. I've been considering them for a while as a way to get video of my daughter without having to get my phone out or stay more present in the moment. So, the camera is fine. It's not great. It's okay. And the framing sometimes is weird. It's actually one of the things that I think does look pretty clever about the Google XR glasses that they showed off for I.O. is you get a tiny viewfinder that pops up. Could be helpful because the camera in these glasses are not where you would usually put a camera, right? Like next to your eye. Like, it's even if you're looking at something, it isn't. You've kind of got to move your head to the side a little bit if you really want to get the camera on it. However, I get lots of fun little shots that I wouldn't get otherwise of things that I just wouldn't take a picture of because I couldn't get my camera in time. However, what I'll say, since having the baby, I've appreciated a whole different function that's available in my Ray-Bans, which is the audio function. So you can listen to things through it has little speakers, and those speakers go down at your ears. And I had previously thought, why would I use these? I have my AirPods Pro significantly better. What I have been more comfortable with, if I'm taking the baby out in the buggy or something, I want to have my ears completely unblocked so I can hear her. And I just feel more comfortable with that. And so I've been listening to podcasts through the Meta Ray Bans because you can listen at lower volumes and still have complete like clarity of the world
Transparency,
around
yeah.
you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's not just transparent mode, it is just fully transparent.
Literally transparent. Yep.
Yeah. And so that's been something that I've really enjoyed and has made me feel more comfortable in doing that. So I've really valued them for that too. So yeah, really cool, really cool.
When you said buggy there, did you want to say pram?
No, much to
Okay.
the frustration of my family, I am using lots of American words for baby things, and you know, a lot of people. I get feedback about, oh, what's wrong with Myke? Why is it if you speak to Americans all the
All
time,
day. Yeah.
you will lose your words. And also, my wife isn't English, right? So
Yes.
Adina brings Americanisms naturally because she learned a lot of them from popular culture. So we say we interchange actually. I say buggy, I also say pram. I kind of code switch a little bit where I need to. I prefer to say diaper to nappy. I just don't like the way nappy sounds.
Nappy.
Similarly, we say pacifier instead of dummy because I don't like how dummy sounds.
No,
I just don't
that's
like that word.
No.
It's mean, but that's what they're called. Pacifiers, we call them dummies. Yeah, so a lot of the time I am using American words, and that's
I love this
yeah.
because this continues your baby class thing where people were really wondering secretly when you were in your pre-birth baby class, who the hell is this guy and where is he from?
Yeah, I don't remember if I said this, but someone asked if I was from Sweden or something like that, which was the best. Because it's like I get this every now and then where people are like, his English is great and his accent's okay enough, but he says weird
things.
Like it's like, and they try and like, are you Canadian? Like, where are you from? No, born and raised in East London is what I tell people. And they never believe me, and then there's like a whole thing that I have to explain.
You just have to say, I talk to Americans every day.
That is what I say. So
They've ruined me.
I only speak to Americans in my work. My wife is Romanian. Like the amount of time that I actually spend talking to people in London, because that's the thing these days, honestly, like most of the people I interact with, not most, so many people I interact with in London didn't grow up in London. Many of them didn't grow up in England, right? So like
exactly.
It really doesn't matter anymore.
Here's my next question, which is going to be, it will be really interesting, won't it, to see how your daughter adapts as she goes
it's going to be hilarious because I know what she's like, hello, this little English accent, like, daddy.
Yeah, right.
She's gonna
so
be
maybe that'll help.
We're all gonna
maybe you'll get
different.
maybe you'll get more English when your daughter is coming home from school.
Maybe
like that.
Like we this is something that me and Adina noticed this when she was pregnant. We were on the train once, and there was a couple and their child, and one of the people was clearly from France. Another person was from somewhere else in Europe. Like you could tell by their accents, but their child sounded like a Cockney, and I thought that was hilarious. Man. And like that's just the way it goes. And
that's it. I knew
funny.
I knew kids whose parents were immigrants growing up, and they didn't have accents at all. And then you go to their home, and it's like the thick Hungarian accents, and you're like, "Whoa!" And the kids,
where'd that come from?
You couldn't tell. And I had a college roommate whose parents were both from Hong Kong, and other than the fact that he looked Chinese, like you would never on the phone, you would never know. Like he was completely there was no Hong Kong detected, but then his dad called on the phone and it was like thick accent, and I'm like, whoa, like it's just that's so get ready for that. But my point here is that maybe she will make you both sound more English as time goes on.
It could happen.
It could happen.
We'll find out. Adina, so she sounds less Romanian to Romanians.
Sure.
As time has gone on, she very much decided she wasn't going to lose her accent. Like she has friends that came to London at the same time that she did, who purposefully got rid of their Romanian accent.
Sure.
But she decided not to do it. But we'll see. Who knows? We're in a new world.
Who knows?
We only had time for one Ask Upgrade, and we did a whole other thing also. You can
We
send
did.
in your
Love
feedback,
it.
follow-up, and questions by going to upgradefeedback.com. Thank you to our members who support us with Upgrade Plus. This week, we're going to do some follow-up about maps, and I'm going to talk about the Indy 500. Go to getupgradeplus.com. You can sign up, get longer ad-free versions of the show each and every week. If you want to watch this show, you can do so on YouTube, where we're the Upgrade Podcast. You can find us just by searching for that. Thank you to our sponsors who supported us this week, ExpressVPN, Vitally, and Fitbod. But as always, the biggest thank you goes to you for listening. Until next time, say goodbye, Jason Snell.
Goodbye, Mike Hurley.